I think we're live. Let me check. Hold on.
No, you're not live.
I'm not live?
No.
You sure? I think we're live.
Yeah.
No. I think we're live.
Nope.
No, we are live.
Uh,
Max, we're
Are
live.
you here? Oh, we're live? Oh,
Yes.
there we are. Cool.
Uh, okay, we have some people watching, so that's nice. Hello, folks.
Hello.
I am Marcelo, and this is Max. We work on the Python SDK of the Model Context Protocol. And well, before we start, can you can you see? Like, I'm gonna be on the small screen anyway, and Max is gonna be on the bigger one because we're on the Meet. That was the easiest setup. So I hope everybody can see properly. Maybe full screen is a bit better, so people can see Max better. Yeah, so today we'll be talking about, well, we are very excited about the V2. You excited, Max?
I am so incredibly excited.
Nice. So we'll be talking about a bit about the, well, the V2, what comes on the SDK, and a bit of what comes in the spec itself. Does that sound good, Max?
That sounds great.
Amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, V2 is going to be a pretty big release for quite a few reasons. We've been working on it since like January this year, I'd say, is when we probably started kicking it off. Um, and so I'm pretty excited to finally get it out the door and to into more people's hands, which will be interesting to see how that goes. um,
Nice.
yeah,
Yeah, I guess we're going to be talking about some of the changes that happen in the SDK and why they happen, and also some of the features that are covered by the new spec. Do you want to start somewhere, Max?
yeah. I mean, I can go through, I guess, a bit of a history as to like the main reasons we're doing this, I suppose. Essentially, at the end of last year, we were considering doing a V2 of the SDK anyway. The SDK was made pretty quickly with, the fast pace of AI. Stuff gets pushed out the door pretty quickly, and there were some difficult design choices in the SDK that made it somewhat hard to work with. At the same time, the MCP spec itself was also somewhat difficult to use in certain deployments and setups. And so we wanted to do a V2 for the SDK, and MCP was doing this kind of redo of how it works for some of the difficulties people have with that. And so combined was a good reason to do a V2. It means we can fix stuff in the SDK as well as coincide with the big release of MCP. The biggest thing with MCP that changed is it went from being a bidirectional stateful protocol to instead being a request response model stateless protocol. And this is very different because MCP started out essentially having a transport that required two streams to be open at all time for you to talk to a server. So a client would have to open a stream sending stuff to the server, and the server would have to send stuff back and keep that open the entire time the client was live. Which worked fine for something like standard IO, where you launch an application locally and talk to it. But as soon as you have an actual internet deployment with thousands of users, it means every single one of the users connected had to have a constant open connection, which was not great for horizontal scaling. As soon as you go past a few thousand clients, you've now got thousands of open network connections. And so MCP planned at the end of last year, started this year, to change to a stateless protocol where you have no open state, nothing running, no constant streams you had to keep open, and instead everything was request response, much more like RESTful kind of API. And so to do that in the SDKs required quite a bit of a refactor. As you can imagine, when the spec first came out with this bidirectional stream stuff, the SDKs were built around that idea, having memory streams internally and a bunch of core architecture designs built around this bidirectional stream setup. And so to support this new spec, we also wanted to refactor the SDK internally. And it is so significant that it would have been basically breaking anyway. And so why not break a bunch of stuff at once? which is what we ended up doing.
Okay, cool. Max, some questions. You said a lot of buzzwords, but let's break it down some stuff so it's a bit easier to understand.
Yeah.
You said at some point that it was difficult to deploy. Like before on the previous spec? Can you expand on that? Why is it difficult to before?
Yeah. So imagine if you were hosting a server, something like Google Drive or whatever, um, when clients connected to you, they had to have this constant open connection, which in a simple setup, if I'm, say, hosting an MCP server and I've got a single physical service running somewhere and clients connect to it, then those network connections go one-to-one.
Yeah.
As soon as you scale up this backend, so if you are someone like Google who has many backend services, what you'll generally do is in front of your internet service, put a load balancer. And so when a client connects, it will route to a random backend server to handle your request. And so in MCP world, the tricky thing here is you have to have this constantly open connection. And so your client will make a first request, the load balancer will route it to a random backend server, but the next request the client makes, so subsequent requests or whatever, will also get routed to a random server. And so this previous protocol that required this stateful connection, basically you needed to be talking to the same server the whole time, doesn't work with load balancers. It made it super tricky for deployments because these big servers essentially had to do a thing called sticky routing, where based on the state of your connection, every time you made a request, every time the client talked to the server, the load balancer had to be smart enough to route you to the same backend server every time. This is very tricky because a simple load balancer is basically every request it receives, it goes to a random backend server. Nice and even distribution, no fancy logic. As soon as a request comes in, it just blindly routes it to a random one. But with MCP, a load balancer would essentially have to inspect the data, understand the MCP protocol, have a registry of where this client was previously connected to and always connected to the same server.
Okay.
This was obviously a huge pain with the old spec.
Cool. Before I ask you about practical changes in code, we didn't introduce. I guess I didn't introduce us properly. So, Max, would you mind introducing yourself? Just
Sure. I am Max Isbey. I'm originally from New Zealand, and at the end of last year, I joined Anthropic to work on MCP. And since the end of 2025, I have been maintaining the Python SDK alongside with Marcelo. That is me.
nice. Thank you, Max. And I work at Pydantic. I've been involved with MCP almost from the beginning because the dependencies I maintain in the Python world are used by MCP, the Python SDK. So I just started putting up some pull requests. And sorry for the late introductions. And let's continue, Max. So on the code side, does something changes? Like, for example, I have an MCP server right now. Do I need to do something to comply with the new spec? Like, can you
Yes.
show something? Like, can you share something? You can
I
show
can.
the docs if it makes it easier.
Yes, I will share the docs. One moment. Let me bring these up in a way that I can share nicely. So Chrome tab, SDK, there we go. Just trying to find a good example of the docs. One moment.
Actually, this is amazing. Keep sharing your screen because now people can see me and you at the same time.
So true. Okay, so this is what it previously looked like when you set up a simple MCP server. You instantiated your server here, and it was previously called fast MCP. You define a few tools, some resources, prompts, and then you run your server. And now with V2, it looks like this. Essentially, the exact same code, except it is now called MCP server. The reason we went through this change is fast MCP was a library written by the fantastic developer Jeremiah Lowen. And at the start of 2025, or maybe it was the end of 2024, it was merged in as part of the SDK. And later in 2025, it was forked back out to be independently developed as its own product. So FastMCP is now an independent project that is quite popular. And so in V1 of the SDK, we still had this object called FastMCP, which often led to confusion. People would make tickets saying, "Why isn't my code working? I'm very confused." And the reason is because they would be using the wrong library or something like that. And so we renamed it to MCP server. Not a super giant change, but yeah, pretty easy to fix. You just rename that.
Right, but you said there is no coding change. Are we sure about that? What?
No coding change.
Yeah.
There is definitely some changes.
Okay.
In some cases there are not. So in a simple case like this, there is no breaking changes.
Okay.
But in a lot of cases there are. So for example, some of the construction parameters on MCP server are slightly different, and some of the imports and types are a bit different. One of the main differences with how MCP works now is the new spec. And so specifically, when MCP changed from the old version, which was in 2025, it was stateful, had bidirectional streams, and it is now stateless. And what we mean by stateless is that everything that a request needs is contained within that request. And so one of the things that MCP did, which was almost impossible if you wanted to scale your server previously, was a thing called elicitation.
Mm-hmm.
And so previously what you could write some simple codes to do elicitation. Nowadays it is quite different, where you have to use, let me try and find example. We've created this new framework which uses this resolve annotations, where you can say, I want to run this tool. My function needs to confirm something with the user, so you can define that up here. Previously, what you would do is inline within the function, you could call the client, but that's no longer possible because of these bidirectional streams being basically removed from the spec.
Right. Just to give a bit more context to what people are seeing right now. So the way it works is this is called what limits this is called MRTR, multi round trip request. I think that's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the idea is that the first request comes, and in this case, what you're looking, the confirm delete is going to be called first, because it needs to be resolved. If you check confirm on the delete folder, you have confirm with annotated. Then we need to resolve the confirm delete first, and then after, what happens is that this is confirm delete is called, and then a response is called back to the client, and then the client sends all the information that was previously in the first request, and also this elicitation request included. And then at that point, we enter the delete folder function body that you've defined, right, Max?
Exactly.
Okay.
So what I can show, even I can do this live. Let me present a different screen here.
Max, we got a feedback that the new docs look sick.
Oh, cool.
Thank
you.
I'm gonna share the link. I'm gonna share the link after.
Yeah. I did note that the docs currently show V2 code, but we're needing to push out the full V2 release during this stream, which we'll do later. I won't be able to.
Oh yeah, I forgot. We're doing that here.
That's one thing we'll be doing a bit later.
Yeah,
is the actual publishing of V2.
Right. I should have started with that, right?
Yeah. But what was I going to show? Yeah, I can, if you want me to walk through how the elicitation previously worked, is you would have. Hold on 1 second. If I go like this, client, and then you've got your server over here. Previously, what you would do is you would call the server, say something like, I want to delete a folder. So you make a delete tool call. And then this tool call, instead of responding, so the server doesn't respond, it instead it opens a stream back to the client. So this was the old way of doing it. The server would open this stream, which I'm going to color as blue. So this HTTP request will be made. It makes a post request saying, hey, I want to delete this. The server opens a response stream. And on that stream, it will say, are you sure? So the server will send back this message on the same stream. The client will then make a new separate request to the server saying, yes, I'm sure. And then finally, the original request will come back and the server will say it is deleted. So this is the old way of doing it. Basically, you make a post request, the server now, you open this and the client will wait for that to complete. On the response, it will stream back, are you sure, while keeping the request open. The client will make a new request saying, yes, I'm sure. And then finally, the server will complete the action, finish the HTTP response and say, all right, completed. This is no longer the case. So now what happens is the server, when it says, are you sure, it basically says, oops, if I bring this up, we say rejected, answer, are you sure? And so what happens is this is no longer a separate request. The client will make its initial post request and the server will reject it and say, you need to answer this question. Are you sure you want to do that?
It's part. Mm-hmm. It's a response. HTTP terms is a response.
Yeah, it will. Yeah, a response saying, "Are you sure?" Then the client will make a brand new HTTP request, which I'm going to make blue this time, and say, "Yes, I'm sure." It will say delete. Oops, delete plus yes, I'm sure. So basically, it remakes the same request it made the first time, but also saying, "Yes, I'm sure. Please do it." And so that's the difference between the old spec and the new spec. The idea between stateful and stateless, where this is stateful, you had to keep the thing open while you were answering the question. This one, it is request response. You send the request, you get a response. You send a second request, you get a second response. And that's why it's quite different in how you have to develop it as well and use this thing Marcelo was talking about with MRTR, or multi-round trip requests.
Cool. Okay. What else can we talk? So I have my MCP server and everything is running fine. It's like, assume I am in a company X, and then I have my MCP server, and my customers can use on Cloud Code, can use on Codex, Cursor, etc., etc. Should I update now?
You can update now, and you will have to follow a migration guide to make sure your code continues to work. Okay. But old clients who already exist and haven't yet updated will still be able to connect to your server and communicate with it. And so servers written with V2 of the SDK will be able to talk both the old 2025 spec and the 2026 onwards spec.
But if I update my code to the new V2, they already work because we support both versions of the spec, right?
Exactly, somewhat.
Okay, so, somewhat? What does that mean?
If you have something like elicitation in your code, the previous method of having the previous approach of being able to, while a tool call happens, you can call the client to elicit and it will respond. Because that is no longer the case, you have to either write two sets of code, one for the old client and one for the new, or as we were saying with this new resolve method, you can write this one bit of code here, which will work with both the old protocol and the new protocol. With a catch, though.
With a catch?
Yes, the catch is, as we were talking about before, with MCP being now stateless and able to be horizontally scaled, the old form of elicitation, the one from 2025, doesn't work when you horizontally scale your server. So previously, you couldn't write elicitation that worked in a horizontally scaled server. So if today on 2026 spec or V2 of the SDK, you want to write elicitation on a horizontally scaled server, you can only do that with new clients. So clients speaking the 2026 spec. Any old client won't be able to connect and won't be able to talk this protocol version.
Okay. Do you know if, just for curiosity, do you know if any client already supports the new spec?
There are some clients, but I don't have the list on hand.
Okay, that's okay. Okay. Max, how do I migrate to the new spec? Like, I don't want to read the whole docs. They seem amazing, but I don't want to read everything. What do I do?
That is a great question, Marcelo. I would say the best bet is to read or really point an LLM at the migration guide. This is a migration guide that has tracked every single breaking change between V1 and V2 with before and after code for basically every single change there is. So if there is code that showed how resource URIs change versus what they're like now, this code will explain exactly how that works. Every single breaking change in here will show the difference between V1 and V2. And so what we've done is done some evals on this migration guide where we have given Claude example code bases, either example code from the previous spec or open source libraries that exist, and get Claude to try to upgrade those code bases to the V2 of the SDK, only given this migration guide. And I would say most of the time, Claude can one-shot it, do it perfectly, and you'll be able to have working code. On the other hand, it's of course written in English, and you can go ahead and read it yourself and migrate. This page is quite extensive of every single change, all import differences, basically every single code change throughout the for V2, which actually breaks something in V1. And you can go in here and find what breaks. Of course, if you have a code base written today and you upgrade it to V2, things like Pyrite, or if you have unit tests, those will pretty quickly reveal where the errors are. And if you just search those errors or the names of the symbols that are broken in here, you should pretty quickly be able to see how it works now.
Nice. Is there any other feature from the new MCP SDK that you'd like to talk about? Or I have one. Do you have something?
Things I want to talk about. I would say the main stuff that's in the new SDK is probably the most exciting to me is elicitation and this resolve framework I was talking about before.
Uh-huh.
Because previously people who wanted to do elicitation or horizontally scaled servers in general weren't able to do that nicely. And now you can natively with the SDK, natively with the new 2026 spec. But yes, I'm sure this is the area you're wanting to talk about.
Yeah, but before that, I'm very proud of this. I know it's kind of copied, made of Fast API depends, like this resolve thing, but I'm very proud that we achieved this one. Like, it was very hard and took a bit of time to actually reach to this design.
Mm-hmm.
So very proud we reached this point. Hope
It's
there
very
are many
exciting
issues.
that it works. It works for both the new protocol and the old protocol. So writing just this one piece of code makes it so your elicitation works across everything, as long as you're not horizontally scaled. Otherwise, it only works on the new spec.
Right. So I want to talk about the open telemetry. So before the previous SDK v1, you didn't have native open telemetry, like traces being emitted by the native MCP code. And now with this new release, you have that. So if you are, for example, using Logfire and you're like instrumenting your code with Logfire and you're using the new V2 SDK, then you're going to be able to see all the spans coming in without the need of any additional instrumentation because it's all native. I have a question from someone. The Sir Pagolin. How do remote servers that require state, for example, Playwright holding a live browser session, get instance affinity now that there is no MCP session ID on the new 2026 path?
That is very fair. So servers that require state, I haven't used the Playwright server before, but I would assume it is somewhat similar to some other examples I have, where previously with MCP, when it was stateful, it also had a thing called a session ID. So when a client first connected to a server, it would create a session ID, and that would use that ID for every subsequent tool call. That's the way that you can you can create the session, keep state on the server, and the server can use the session ID to track actions and whatnot. And so one of the examples I see commonly is something like a document editing MCP server, where I connect to a server, open a document, and I say like write a line or append a line at the end. And that's my next tool call. It will use a session ID to make sure I'm on the same document. The issue with this approach is that you now cannot open multiple documents. Your LLM cannot edit 2 documents at once because your entire MCP connection is tied to this one ID setup right at the start. And so the idea with the removal of session IDs and removal of sessions is instead to have the tools themselves have the ID as a parameter. So say you're editing a document and you want to open a document, the LLM will be given an ID of the document, and then its next tool call, which is like append line to the end of the document, it will put the ID of the document in the tool call. And so the recommendation with the new spec is you should have this state, the state ID or whatever, part of the tool call that the LLM passes. And yeah.
Right. Do we have an example in the docs about how to do this? Like how to pass a state? I don't think we have, do we?
I don't think so. That'd be a good thing to write up, actually.
Right.
Let me have a look. We've got deploy and scale, request state across. No, I don't think we have any clear examples. That would be a good one to put in here.
If you click on request state, what do we have?
Request state is about MRTR. So the request state is part of
right.
MRTR under the hood. Yeah, that's a separate thing. If you're wanting to have state across tool calls, the recommendation is to add that state as a tool parameter the LLM uses when calling the tool.
Okay.
This has the big benefit of, now the LLM can do multiple things at once, and it's not tied to your client like VS Code or whatever, having a single connection and only being able to do a single thing at a time. And so with Playwright, I assume it could then control multiple browsers at the same time instead of being tied to just one.
Right. Okay. Very cool. If anyone has more questions, just please keep it going. What else can we comment about the new SDK?
The new SDK.
Deprecations, maybe?
That's deprecations?
Yeah, I don't know.
Deprecated features. Yeah, there's quite a few deprecated features in the spec itself. So the MCP spec has deprecated a few things which are mostly server to client requests, mostly being deprecated. So things like routes, sampling, and logging. And I think server to client. So here's the list of them. So ping, logging, sampling, routes, and client to server progress reports, which was used for things like when a server makes a request to the client could then send progress back while that request was being handled, but that's not really a thing anymore with the new spec.
Those things are being deprecated because no one used them.
No one used them really. Fun fact though, with the deprecation of logging messages, the new spec also adds functionality for logging and then deprecates it straight away. So
nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Do we have something else to talk about that's important?
One big thing with the SDK is, there's a few things with the SDK which are not fully advertised in the docs just yet. But part of it is the internals of the SDKs have been rewritten a lot to split apart the MCP logic from the wire protocol. And so previously, I would say there's a few layers within the SDK that you could define. You would have the transport layer. This is something like SSE or streamable HTTP or standard IO. On top of that, you would have JSON RPC, which is the actual protocol message format used, like the wire format. And then on top of that, you have the actual MCP logic, things like tool calls, elicitation, stuff like that. And previously in the SDK, this was mostly merged into a single class, and that made it very tricky to split that logic out. Or in some cases, people wanted to do things like pluggable transports. Although pluggable transports were not something officially supported in the spec, it is slightly more possible to do now with the SDK. Although not officially a supported feature, it is something that the SDK architecture now allows you to do, where previously it was essentially impossible. The other thing that I think is quite cool is the split of the MCP library and the
Yeah.
MCP types library. And so we've now got a standalone library, which are all of the types in the MCP spec, which is kind of a tricky thing to actually define because you have a few different. There's quite a few differences with the actual schema of the MCP spec between versions. Previously, this was quite simple. When going from all the way from 2024 all the way up to 2025 November spec last year, the schemas would just be additive. So more and more fields would be added, but it would be essentially backwards compatible. With the new specs, 2026 and V2 SDK, there are now breaking changes in this schema. And so what we've done with the MCP types package is we have built essentially three different parts of the types. We have the 2025 spec, so all of the schemas generated from that. We have the 2026 spec and all of the schemas generated from that. And then we have the average of the two. So another module, which is the average of the models between all of the SDK MCP spec versions. And so the way the SDK uses this is when serializing a request to a server or receiving a response from a server, based on the current negotiated version, it will then determine which specification schema to use to validate things are correct and whatnot. And yeah, the great thing is this is now a separate library. And so if you wanted, you don't have to install the entire MCP package. You can instead just install the MCP types package if you want to use the types directly for some reason.
Right. And in the future, we're going to also separate the MCP client into its own package called MCP client. I think to me, I got the the PyPI namespace, so we're gonna use that one. And unfortunately, the MCP-server PyPI domain is taken. So let's see if we can get that one.
That one.
Yeah, and yeah. What else? Something else?
As top features.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything that off the top of my head. Do you have anything that you're thinking of?
Well, we changed the low-level server, but I don't think that's that interesting to talk about because most of people don't use that. We just changed the yeah.
The one thing I would say about the low-level server, which I'm somewhat excited for, is again for the people who are doing more advanced setups and wanting low-level control over their server. The new low-level server is truly low-level, whereas before it wasn't really. So previously, the low-level server did a bunch of transformations on your return types and sometimes validation on the input types that went above and beyond just getting the parameter types down or something. And other things like storing state where it shouldn't. Low-level server now is essentially just a dumb registry where you need to construct the correct types to return and handle the inputs however you want. But this means you have way more control. So if you're wanting to add, for example, there's something else we can probably talk about is custom types or custom modifications to the spec. You can do that now on the low-level server much easier than how you could previously. And nice. So, yeah, one thing which we've added is a thing called extensions where you can add...
Oh, we did that. Nice.
We did, I know.
Was it near you?
It was a team effort.
Really? Oh, I created the pull request, you finished.
Yeah. Me and Claude.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so extensions is something that's been added to the SDK. The initial example is a thing called MCP Apps, which is a UI framework built on top of MCP. And so this has a sort of experimental version of it inside the SDK, which I'd be keen for people to try out and see what they think. And see whether this new extensions framework actually is as expressive as people need it to be for custom stuff people are wanting to do with the protocol. Right. But yeah, either way, we've now got both on the high level and the low level a much more expressive way to do whatever you want, I suppose.
Max, before we wrap up and actually make the release of V2, where can I go and if I have any problem with the new SDK, where can I go to complain?
There's a couple places. The easiest is probably creating an issue on the repo itself.
Mhm.
So on the actual SDK repo, you can go ahead and create an issue. Um, Up here, if you create new issue, you can actually click V2 feedback, and it will have a new format that you can write in there for what went wrong with the new V2 of the SDK, which would be incredibly helpful if people run into problems or bug or whatever. Go ahead and do that. The other place is in the Discord server for Model Context Protocol, which I think is somewhere around here. Discord. Yeah, the MCP contributor Discord. So if you go in here and you want to have a chat and don't want to make a public issue or whatever, you can come in here and you can talk to me or Marcelo, and we'd be happy to help out or have discussions about whatever.
Cool. Well,
Mhm.
thank you, Max. I think, well, if no one has any questions, let's continue it and make the V2 release.
Yes,
Max,
I'm very keen.
how is the release process of the MCP SDK?
How is the release process?
Yeah, what do you do?
Um, what do I do? That's a really great question. I am going to right now. I create the release. I'm not sure what I can share from it, but on my
What?
screen.
Oh,
But
I see. No,
yeah,
aren't you on GitHub?
yeah, I should be able to do that. Let me
Yeah,
try
you,
this.
you can share anything from GitHub.
Yeah, yeah. I'm going to create two releases actually.
Okay.
I'm going to be creating V1, the final quotation marks V1 release before we release V2,
Okay.
and then the V2 release, which would be exciting. Um, Let me do that right now. I don't remember what version the last one was.
Wait, what are you doing?
I'm creating a V1 release.
Ah, okay, yeah, yeah.
V120, I'll do.
Oh, yeah. For how long are we maintaining the security fixes and bug fixes on the V1 SDK?
How long are we creating?
I don't think we talked about
How,
this actually.
I don't think we have decided. I think for a while at least for the foreseeable future, we're going to be putting critical fixes onto V1, especially because V2 is quite breaking.
Yeah,
And so I don't want to, force people to have a terrible time there.
yeah, but
Uh,
I would say that we are not gonna be adding just bug fixes into V1. For that,
yeah,
use the V2 SDK.
yes, yeah, small bug fixes and stuff, definitely not. Mostly vulnerabilities,
Yeah,
and if there's, someone finds something that breaks everything
right.
somehow, then yeah. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and create that V1 release. Very
Uh,
exciting.
yeah, just to explain to the public, when you release a GitHub release, we automatically trigger the job to publish to PyPI. So
Indeed.
I think you need to approve it.
Yeah, I'm getting a few things. Share this tab. Um, Got to wait for those unit tests to go, which will be interesting to see on V1 because V1 has some flaky unit tests. Um, but yeah, and then we can go ahead and start creating the V2, which I'll actually while the V1 release is going, I'll start making the V2 release.
Nice. If anyone has any questions in the meantime, please post it here and I'll read.
V2, cool. Um, yeah, for the I don't know. What do you think for the previous tag? Do we select? Do we select V1 somehow and then just every commit? I'm guessing we just do RC1,
What? What are you talking about?
like for generating the release notes for V2. I'm assuming previous tag RC1.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, I wouldn't even. No, I don't think that's what you want. I think you want to write something cute.
Write something cute.
Yeah, because or you can leave it this. But what's this? Is this the cute stuff? Oh, you have. How did you do this? Wait, did you generate with AI?
I'm just really fast at writing.
What did you do?
Um, no, I already had it written.
Ah, okay. Uh,
Cool. let me change this a little bit because I don't think this is super cute enough. Cool. So let's say Python. Cool. Is there anything you want to talk about with the Python SDK release? The hardest thing about this new spec?
Um, oh, if we're talking about the spec itself, I think there were too many features to work on.
Hmm.
I think, well, being a bit more critical about the development of the spec, I think this was hard to work properly with. Like on the previous spec release, there was a consensus that it was too much to actually create a spec and then test on the SDK, and it was agreed by everybody that that would change. Like real test with the new SDK, like test stuff properly, like in code, not just theory. But
Hmm.
it didn't seem that happen. Uh, so I hope like for the next iterations of the spec that we have a more practical approach on the spec development. Um, yeah,
Mm,
I
I
hope
think that's very fair.
that's
I
my
think
expectation.
I think the hardest thing about the spec release is it's, in my opinion, the first breaking spec release, like the one that properly breaks the actual protocol in ways which uh, is very different to the previous protocol. Uh, at least very positive in a lot of cases,
Right.
which is super exciting. But yeah, it makes it a bit harder because it means the SDK has to somehow support both these old and new worlds. Um, uh,
Yeah,
which
the fact that the SDK needs to support the previous spec and the communication is like the client needs to support multiple versions and the server needs to support multiple versions makes it hard to develop.
I agree.
Okay, we're
Cool.
ready.
All right. Well, there is the release. I think we're ready to publish.
Press it. Go
All
ahead.
right. Amazing. Now I will.
Woohoo!
I'm going to wait and get the V2 pipeline going. We've got V1, which has just been published, and now we'll get V2 stable release, which is exciting. I'm keen to see what people think of it and what issues they find so we can fix it as soon as possible.
Nice.
Yeah.
Me too.
Um, it's going to be good to actually get into people's hands because it's been just in our hands for about 6 months. So it'll be nice to,
That's crazy. Yeah.
it's so sad. It grew up so fast. It's already out on its own.
Yeah. 6 months. That's well, no, a bit more, right? I think we started in December, no?
Um, I don't remember when we made V1 maintenance mode. Delete that. Cool. Latest update. Sorry, just typo.
Amazing.
um, fully amazing. Gotta now. Let me share the screen. There we go. We're
Okay.
waiting for V2 pipeline to finish before we'll upload to PyPy.
Okay. Well, any wrap up before we have V2 on PyPI?
I guess the main thing is I just hope everyone enjoys the new release and enjoys the new spec. I'm very keen to see all the public servers and clients out there to start switching over to the new 2026 spec and supporting all the new features. Uh, I think it's going to be exciting seeing how people are going to be able to scale MCP now much more efficiently than they could before. Previously it was quite limited where big servers who hosted MCP had to break the spec in certain ways so that it would even be able to support more than 100 clients or whatever.
Right.
And now with the new spec, we're going to be able to see much bigger servers with much better scalability, able to support all of the specs features. So I'm sure we'll start seeing bigger servers have things like elicitation and whatnot built in, and more clients supporting it and whatnot, which would be very, very cool to see.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see what people are going to be able to build with it.
a dev from my team said that he was very excited to be able to use elicitation.
Yeah, yeah. I've had the same with talking to some startups. They're very keen to actually do that, which would be very cool.
Cool.
And yeah, I'm interested to see what people see with the breaking changes. I'm also very curious. This is for a V1 to V2. We did change a lot of code, which
Yeah.
caused code to be breaking. And it'll be really interesting to see with how good LLMs are nowadays, how easy it is to actually do the upgrade.
Right.
Whereas before, having to look at a migration doc like that might have been quite a bit daunting task.
True.
Anyway, all right, I think we're ready to publish.
Nice.
Oh my god,
Dun dun dun.
there we go. V2 is being uploaded to PyPy.
Dun dun dun.
Very exciting.
Okay.
We can wait and watch the issues page and see what people say. Uh,
Okay, the
how,
build's
how are you
ready. What?
how are you feeling, Marcelo?
I'm good. Finally, it happened. So.
Finally, nervous, excited?
It's a new step. I know that it's unavoidable that there will be a lot of issues. It happens. We cannot predict what's. Opa, opa! It's on PyPI, folks. V2 is ready.
There it
Woohoo!
is, V2, yay!
Woohoo!
Cool. Well, I hope people
Nice,
enjoy it. Um, and yeah, go
nice.
check it out, download it, see what you can build with it. Let us know what you want changed.
Cool, Max. Cool. Yeah, I think that we achieved our goal. We explained a bit about everything, and then well, we made a release. So thank you, everybody. See you on V3. Yeah. Have a nice day. Hope everybody liked.
Everyone.
See you. Now how do I close this? Oh, I don't know how to close this. Hope. And stream.